Hey friends, this is the Miss Volfie from our half-acre homestead, and this is Simple Tied Log Cabin Quilt Part 2. Okay, this is what a log cabin quilt looks like. I want to show you the simplest way not to make a mistake in getting this particular pattern. Now, the first time I made a log cabin quilt, I had zigzags all over the place before I figured out the squares. So, for you first timers, I'm going to show you how to do it right the first time. Okay, now here I have just a standard piece of graph paper, and my quilt is 8 blocks across and 10 blocks down. So in order to get the pattern right, I'm going to do it first on graph paper. Now this may seem fussy, folks, but you know what? It's so worth it to have it nice. So I'm going to mark off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I've marked off 32 squares. That means that each square of 4 is my quilt block. Now I'm going to go down, starting with the first one is 1, I'm going to go down 40. Okay. And what we're going to do now is we're going to connect the dots. In order for us to get it the way we want it, we are going to square off 80 blocks. Okay, as you can see here, I made a little mistake on the bottom. This block was only 3. So, now what we're going to do is, now one of the things about the log cabin quilt, if you want this particular pattern, okay, you need to have even numbers of blocks. You can't have odd numbers. It has to be 8 by 8, 8 by 10, 6 by 6, 6 by 8. It can't be 9 by 7 because you need a center point on your blocks. Right there and right there. And so here are our center points. And I'm marking the center point so that I know where to flip my block. So now I'm just going to take my pen and I'm going to make my blocks, all the way to the center point. And then I'm going to flip them over and I'm going to do this all the way down to the center point of here. There. Now we turn over our graph paper and we do the exact same on the other side. See how we've laid this out? Okay, now as you can see, I have this picture here to help me because even I have trouble with this unless I'm piecing it as I go along. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start coloring in the dark side of each block. Not very tidy, but you get the idea. Now, I'm going to number our rows so that we know this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Each row has its own diagram. Let's get started. Okay, so according to our diagram, every row is going to be 8 wide until we have 10 rows. So here we go. 1, Here's row number 1. Row number 1 starts with the light. See the light side? It goes this way. Block number 2 has the dark here. So I'm going to pin these together at the seams. Now I was a little bit lazy and didn't cut my edges off, but you really want to rotary cut your edges so that they are square, or else your seam is going to be all messed up. But all right, we'll take our 2 pins out, and there is our first 2. See how this is making a stripe? We get out our diagram. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, so that you know exactly where you're going. So we are now on row 1, block 3, okay? And block 3 has the light side up and the dark side down. It looks simple, but if you don't have your chart, it could get a little bit funky on you. Instead of having a diamond within a diamond, you end up with zigzags and squares, and if you wanted a pattern, and this is just the pattern I've chosen. If you had wanted a zigzag pattern of your fabric, then all you had to do was arrange the blocks differently. Okay, last block has the dark point pointing down and in, and the light pointing out and up. Okay. These can get confusing if you're doing each row separately and then assembling them, even if you're not. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of scrap fabric and I'm going to put number 1. Pen works better on paper. So we've got row number 1. That's our row. And we want to put which direction that this row is going to point. Okay, row 1, and we're going to put that right on the center. Now you're going to do this with every row. The next row in your diagram, row number 2, when you follow your directions and you have it all pinned together or sewn together, you will again put a piece of paper here with row number 2. You'll write a piece of paper, you'll put row number 2, and the arrow pointing in the direction that that is going to go. This is very important because once you get to row number 6, it's going to go in the opposite direction. All right, so when you have, or when I have all my rows sewn together, we'll be back for assembly. There is strip 1, and it is, the arrow is pointing up, which means it's the top of the quilt. And here is strip 2. Okay, so there's my strips. I'm flipping them over because this is the one I'm going to sew with first, and I'm just, now that they're in order, I'm just going to lift them and set them aside on a chair on the ironing board. And now, number 1, pointing up, very first strip. I always pin these tags on center. Okay, so here is, because we've put it in order, here is 2 up. And now that this is exactly where it needs to go, we're going to leave number 2 on here, but we're taking out number 1. And now we're just going to, now that it's in order, we're just going to fold 2 over onto 1. And our first pin is going to be the very center. And then we just line her all up and go down each side of the row, pinning. And the side that you pinned is the side that you sew. Now folks, I did not cleanly cut my edges, as you can tell. But trust me, if you're doing this and you've never done it before, Make sure your blocks are all properly trimmed square. That way you won't get confused about where your fabric needs to be lined up. All right, let's sew this first 2 strips together. As we're just gonna sew. But I'm gonna back stitch now, because now this is the finished thing and I don't want my edges coming apart with the stress of the fabric, because it's a big quilt top. We want it to be secure. All right, I'm gonna pin number 3 on and we'll be back. So here's 5, and we're gonna take that piece off, and here's 6. Now, we are putting them in the totally opposite direction. If you can see that the center is like a light colored diamond, right? So 6 has the arrow pointing that way, and that's the way we're going to continue to go. Now we just continue to sew the strips on in the order that we've written them down. Okay. I'm telling you folks, leaving the paper on, and even though we turned it over and we're working from this end now, it still tells us which direction to put the next block. So this is number 7. We're going to leave that on for a second. And number 8 goes like this. Because there's number 8, the tag. So we're going to take number 7 off. And we're going to fold this over. And pin and sew. We're getting there, folks. We're so close to this top being done. Okay, folks. Here it is. You can't really... Mom and Howie are struggling to... Let's see. Howie and Mom are... Hi, honey. Struggling to try and get it up. But there is the finished quilt top. And I can't be more pleased. I really can't. It's absolutely beautiful. This is the Mrs. Volfie from our half-acre homestead saying, that's the hard part. The rest is easy. Part 3, we're going to assemble it, tie it, and bind it. Take care. Bye-bye.